Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm gonna be on the topic of endings / series finales, final seasons, all that kind of, obviously all that's kind of connected, and obviously it's a little different depending on the medium and stuff like that, but just endings in general and how I feel about them. And I like obviously eventually want to get your opinion on, but how I personally feel about endings. I've talked about this extensively in many different aspects of the podcast. So, but if you've never heard them, obviously I'm gonna put my feelings here. When it comes to an ending, especially when it comes to a TV show, when it comes to series finales, where it's like, as well as final season, I will always be okay with a final season or series finale if it was by choice of either the creator or they've been given time to wrap something up. My pet peeve is when like a show is canceled at the last minute, where it's like you never get that proper conclusion to, like, the fact of the matter is, if someone's going it, like if a network's like, okay, we're not going to renew you for another season, this next season will be your last season, so you better wrap your story up. I don't like that necessarily. I'd rather it be the creator's choice to decide I'm gonna end this, but even then, at least I'm happy with that. I don't like it when it's like, oh, you're watching a season of a show and it's like, oh, here's the season finale, and you find out later on, oh, that season finale was actually the series finale. Because typically, you know, seasons, you know, to get you drawing back into a show, obviously a lot of seasons end off on cliffhangers. The best example of a show that's like really good that like kind of that happened to is the show Alphas. If you've never seen the Alphas, it's a show I would want to recommend to people, especially if you've never seen it. It's on Netflix, but at the same time, it's like I can't recommend that show to people because it ends off on like the biggest cliffhanger, but it got canceled, and it's like you'll never get the conclusion to that story. So what's the point of making you watch that show when in fact you're just going to walk away dissatisfied because you're never going to have that ending? So it's like it leaves you in that like tough area. I mean, it's not even just that. There are plenty of other shows that are like that kind of fall into that category. As long as it's like, hey, like the fact of the matter is the creators went into this knowing it's their final season, you know, whether it was by their own choice or, you know, the network gave them that option, then it's like I will always be happy for that, because that means they may not be able to wrap everything up in a tight little nice little bow like most people would like, but at the very least they could at least give some closure, which some people are like have different mentalities about it, where it's like obviously like some people want everything tightly like put in a bow, like all answers, everything resolved, like good closing. Other people are like, you can leave some stuff open-ended. I'm fine with that. You don't need answers for everything. To me, like the thing is, I have that part of me that never wants anything to end. I know everything should end and everything has to have an ending, because it's like if it keeps going on and on, a lot of people would be like, well, a show will begin to suffer if it goes on for too long. Like a show needs to have a finite ending, which, you know, depending on certain people, some people have the endings of certain things kind of planned out from the very beginning. Some people have that, some people don't. It's just like they're kind of going by basis to basis. Like a great example is like Lost. Lost was kind of like a mystery series that a lot of like, you know, personally I walked away from it liking it, like even the ending, which a lot of people didn't, because it's one of those situations where it's like they didn't get the answers they wanted. A lot of stuff was unanswered. It was just a lot of mysteries upon mysteries, and just the way it was written and everything. Well, like I said, I didn't have a problem with it. I really liked, you know, Lost ending, because it was, for most people, it's like that's more of an emotional ending rather than the closure that a lot of people wanted, because it's like we didn't get the answers we wanted, but at the same time it's like, but I had a very different viewing experience when it came to Lost compared to most people. I mean, I'm sure there's some people who did the same, but obviously I watched it all on Netflix, so I binged on the entire series. I didn't have to wait week to week for episodes or months in between for like the new season to come out. I just like, oh, I finished this episode, go right to the next one. I finished this season, went right to the next one. So that's why, you know, I get, you know, that viewing experience does matter. But like I was saying before, like in general, I just don't like endings because I like these stories, and it's like when I get attached to a story in a series, I don't ever want to see it come to an end. I just want to see these adventures go on for as long as possible. I will always appreciate the journey that we've had, but even when it comes to endings, there's always, I mean, and I'm sure a lot of people can understand that feeling of like wanting a little bit more. Like for example, there's this series a manga, well, manhwa, I'm just going to refer to it as a Korean manga because I always have a problem saying that word, just because I always feel like I'm saying the Chinese word for a Chinese manga when I say that. But nevertheless, like there's a Korean manga I read called Unbalanced Unbalanced. Highly recommend you check it out if you've never checked it out before. But nevertheless, it's a romance it's a romance comedy drama series, and it has a very finite ending. It has a very good ending, but there's also that little part of you that's like, I want a little bit more because I want closure on a lot of the other characters. We never got to find out where their stories ended. We got to find out where most of the characters' stories ended, but not everyone. That obviously that you kind of got to see and get to know of across the entire series. So, but back to the point of endings in general. And yes, I know when it comes to endings, it's like, well, you always have those adventures that you obviously can reread or rewatch something, but it's still never the same because like you already know the steps that the story is going to take and everything. You won't have those new adventures, those new twists, those new experiences, and that's what makes me sad about endings and stuff like that. That's why I don't ever want anything to ever end. But the fact of the matter is, things do have to end. That's just kind of like, if you didn't have endings, you wouldn't be able to enjoy something in its entirety, its completion, you know, if that's the case. In some cases, you do want things to have proper endings too, because it's like, if something happens, you may never ever get an ending, you know, depending on certain material, because it's like, someone that might be associated might pass away or something like that. So there's always that you have to think about too. It's a morbid thought, but still it's there. For me, I've never had too much bad experiences when it comes to endings or series finales or whatever the case may be. More often than not, most endings I've come across, I've liked them. Like I said before, like I always do want that little bit more. One example of that's not 100% true is when it comes to the series Castle. Now with Castle, there's a lot of things going on there. Like there's a lot, not just within the show, but there's outside the show type of things that kind of affected it in itself. But obviously, I walked away not too 100% happy with the series finale because I wasn't expecting it to be the series finale. I knew Castle was one of those shows that was kind of on the cusp of like whether to get renewed or not. But like I said, there's a lot of outside stuff I won't get into because like a lot of it's speculated stuff and it's rumors, and I'm not going to comment on that, even though I kind of have in the past a little bit, but I've been extremely vague about it. But still, nevertheless, like, it's ending like where as it is, it's good. Like obviously you see where extra stuff was added, like yeah, we know this is the series finale, so we're kind of slapping this on at the very end of it to kind of give it a proper ending. But at the same time, it's like, you know where they were planning to take the series anyway, so that's a situation where at least you conflict. It's like it has a proper ending to a certain extent, but even then you don't get everyone's ending. Obviously it's a slap together ending that I don't appreciate, but at the same time it's like I actually would prefer that ending than what they were going to planning on doing, because obviously stuff outside of the show, you can see the direction the show was possibly going to take because of where that ending went. So it's like, I'd rather them do what they did, but still I would have liked, once again, get closure when it comes to all the other characters. But like I said, there was just a lot of stuff combined together that kind of led to that, and that actually, in all honesty, has completely ruined the show. That plus, like, you know, knowing what I know about kind of outside stuff related to the show, like I used to kind of watch that show like to the point, like obviously it's syndicated on TNT. I'm pretty sure it still does, but I catch episodes from time to time. I was like, oh man, I love this case. I know it inside and out. I know who the killer is, and I love this interaction between the characters. It's like, oh yeah, this is like one of my favorite lines or something like that from the show, and it's like, I can't enjoy the show anymore because of that said situation. Like I said, that's not just an ending thing, but it played a part in it. It's just a whole situation. Like once again, like I will always prefer it if someone is going into a show knowing, like going into a season knowing that this will be their final season. And I wish every show had an opportunity to do that. Even if a show's early on in its stages, give them one more episode to like clean something up. Maybe, you know, I will always prefer that, just that little extra step to kind of give it on a story its completion. But you know, that's just not how things necessarily work, you know, across anything. Like another example, kind of switching back over to like the manga aspect of thing, like it's something I've heard multiple people talk about, no matter how much you feel about it, is Bleach. Like to me, I heard a lot of stuff about seeing the creator of Bleach was rushed to finish that show. I mean, the manga, because obviously the anime had ended, but the fact of the matter is a lot of people were very dissatisfied with it. But like obviously there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but nevertheless, that's a series that I really like. That also, that kind of influences me not wanting to ever finish it, knowing that stuff ahead of time. And that's another thing too, knowing how endings work and stuff like that, whether a show is canceled or not, makes you not even want to finish it. Another example is like Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. That's a show that got canceled after its first season. I got most of the way through that show, and after finding out it got canceled, I never bothered to finish it. Knowing that ahead of time also ruins a show for you if you know, like, oh yeah, it was actually canceled, you know, it didn't actually have like a proper ending. You know, like obviously for seasonal wise it had an ending, but obviously like I said before, like a lot of seasons are built around having a cliffhanger because it's the whole point of trying to draw you back in. I can't actively think of a show that doesn't have cliffhanger endings for their seasons. I'm sure there's examples. If you do know some, let me know, because some you listing some might end up jogging my memory, and there's probably be plenty I'll probably end up remembering, you know, after I finish recording this. But nevertheless, you know, so my question to you is, what do you think about series finales, final seasons, endings in general? Like, what are your thoughts behind it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Just what are your thoughts on it? You know, are there any endings, like obviously you don't have to go into spoilers, but obviously talk a little bit about endings. Like, do you have you know, good experiences with endings, bad experiences, why some work and some don't, you know, tell me in the comments down below. I'm very interested. It's a conversation that I just like. It's a very interesting subject, you know, and I guess it speaks volumes of different forms of media, like compared like anime and manga, like as a form of media compared to something like TV shows, even though there's similarities, and even then I don't know the ins and outs about, like, you know, publishing mangas and animes and stuff like that compared to, like, you know, publishing a TV show, or, you know, just like, you know, obviously the whole rating system being a factor into whether, you know, a show's coming back for another season. So like all that stuff, like let me know your own thoughts and things about it. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.